Meghan Markle's twisted Andrew Mountbatten Windsor plot has just been rumbled as she quite literally pops the bubbles, taunting the royal family like the rest of the Sussex squad, when indeed, as we saw yesterday, last night, Prince William, who cares about the British royal family, who cares about the monarchy, who wants things to be okay, is admitting, no, I'm not calm. Indeed, I can't keep calm and carry on. I can't even watch the movie Hamnet because I am so upset about the situation with my uncle and everything that is now at risk. This is what he had to say as he arrived at the BAFTAs.
I haven't watched it. I watched last night. You need to be in a quiet state. You need to be in a calm state. I'm not at the moment. I'll save it for when I'm feeling ready.
So, why are Meghan and Harry so happy at the moment? Why are they briefing that they're not saying anything while at the same time saying something via briefing? Because for Harry, he believes that Andrew's downfall, his enemy, is going to be the opportunity for him to return as some type of white knight savior. Oh yeah, they hated me, but now compared to my uncle, I'm actually okay. But for Meghan, it's much, much more sinister. Watch Nancy and Stephanie Sidley outline her plot on Twin Talks.
I actually said what's going to happen. Meghan, when they go through their, separation, whatever, and she comes out with a book or a show, whatever, she is going to say, this is why I had to take my kids out of the palace. This is why I had to leave. You guys thought that it was about me and about race. Nope. I couldn't have myself and my children around Andrew.
Even though my mom said it was about race, even though Oprah said it was about race.
She's going to backtrack.
Yeah, she's going to backtrack. I never called them racist. I needed to protect them from King Charles because King Charles was protecting his brother.
Yeah, he covered it up.
Especially Queen Elizabeth. She was the worst. She wanted my kids around a predator, and I couldn't do it. I'm telling you,
that's
Stephanie,
exactly what's going to happen.
What do we always say? Clock it.
Oh, I've clocked it all right. But basically, all of this works for Harry and Meghan. That's what's so twisted here. But anyone sane isn't taking that, as Samantha Markle posted to me over the weekend. Lol, in my opinion, Harry and Meg are lucky that the Andrew scandal is going on because it deflects from their own actions and failures. They've done so much damage to the royal family, so if anything, it's the other way around. And the media focus on Andrew is to deflect from scandals surrounding Harry and his darling wife. I could be wrong. Maybe Harry and his wife are jealous, but Andrew is getting more media attention than they are, regardless of the specifics. But of course, the Sussex squad, including high-profile members of the Sussex squad, are out in force to try and say that me having a conversation like this is in some way being intellectually dishonest, even though I have spent years and years and hours, even over the past 7 days, covering the Andrew scandal and the impact on the British royal family. As I've been very clear on, these are two individual stories, and I believe that both of them warrant attention. But look at this from Miss Anne Harriman, one of the high-profile squaddies, who thought that there was a sort of conspiracy going on with the Daily Telegraph using that picture and writing it was only a matter of time until they blamed it on Meghan. This picture of her sat next to him is a deliberate editorial choice. Well, it may be. Remember David Boys, who was the attorney for the late Virginia Giuffre, had called on Meghan Markle to give evidence in her trial, if it was going to happen, obviously it didn't in the end, about what she knew regarding Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, at the time Prince Andrew. Dr. Scholler, Britain's race baiter in chief, writing, "Keep Harry and Meghan out of your God-forsaken mouths over Andrew." After years of maligning them, using them as bait and fodder to distract from the disgrace of the royal family, i.e. Andrew, the alleged pedo formerly known as Prince, you have no right to demand or expect them to say anything. It's none of their damn business. Apart from the fact that they are the woke-topians who do often demand that people have to say something. Wasn't Meghan Markle one of those Black Lives Matter folk who was all about silence is violence? And we have had silence here. Yes, there's a paragraph in spare, but that's it. Andrew was never raised in the Oprah interview, in the Netflix series, in the Anderson Cooper interview, on the Tom Bradby interview, on the BBC interview. Andrew was never raised. And spare me this rubbish that Harry and Meghan are keeping quiet. Look at this briefing to Rob Shooter of Shooter Scoop. Headlined, "Exclusive, Harry and Meghan feel vindicated after Andrew arrest." And he writes that sources close to the couple tell Naughty But Nice that Andrew's arrest has reinforced what they have long maintained privately, that the institution they left behind was deeply troubled. The gloating. One Montecito insider says, I mean, I can absolutely imagine that. They do feel vindicated. For years, they were painted as the problem because they were another problem. Another source added, Harry always said there were serious issues behind palace walls. The public has only now seen how messy it really was. He didn't speak about Andrew. He never spoke about Andrew. Think about Oprah Winfrey. He made up racism claims. Actually, if Harry and Meghan had had the balls to talk about the cover-up involving Andrew back during the Oprah Winfrey interview in 2021, then I think we would have taken it seriously. Because people like me had been saying, yeah, there has been a cover-up for years. Shooter goes on, Andrew's legal crisis has once again cast a harsh light on the monarchy, and friends of the Sussexes say it underscores why the couple chose to step away in 2020. Oh my God, this is the most crazy rewriting of history. They were criticised for escaping, a source explains. Now people understand that leaving wasn't impulsive, it was survival. The security issue in particular remains deeply personal. In his memoir, Harry wrote about fears that he and Meghan would lose protection, noting the contrast with Andrew's situation at the time. Also, not in the wake of my uncle Andrew. He was embroiled in a shameful scandal. This is what Harry wrote, accused of the sexual assault of a young woman. And no one had so much as suggested that he lose his security. Whatever grievances people had against us, sex crimes weren't on the list. So let's just break there for one moment. Harry only wrote about Andrew because he cared about losing his own security. So while Sussex Squad members are saying that he is in some way covered as some type of whistleblower because he included that tiny paragraph, I would argue he's not. He's done far less on Andrew because what Harry and Meghan wanted to do was bring down the British royal family via criticism of Charles and William and Catherine and Camilla. Remember, half of those people I've just named, they accused of racism in regards to the unborn child Archie. So I'm just being honest about this. Harry and Meghan never cared about Andrew. Indeed, they loved Andrew and Fergie because they felt that Andrew and Fergie had treated them better in some way during their time in the British royal family. They also felt that they had this close relationship with Beatrice and Eugenie, who had effectively sided with Harry and Meghan over William and Catherine, so they didn't particularly feel the need to put them through any more pain, any more trauma. I mean, Beatrice, we're going to come to this a bit later, suffering from something close to a nervous breakdown at the moment. That's not nice. And obviously they were concerned about that. But I'm just really not allowing these two to rewrite history, given the couple that has always been absolutely strident on Andrew, absolutely clear on what should happen to Andrew, absolutely clear on the fact that 7 years ago he should have been gone for good, is Prince William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales. That's the fact. Anyway, back to Shooter Scoop, who says those words insiders say are echoing again. For Harry, this isn't about revenge. A long-time friend says, it's always about revenge. Sorry, I can't even get through that sentence without scoffing. It's about fairness. He felt the rules were applied differently. No public statement is expected, but privately sources say the feeling is unmistakable. They're not shocked. They feel proved right. And of course, for people who say, Harry and Meghan aren't briefing, well, what explained People magazine last week? People magazine, where they always leak to, where Prince Harry was apparently frustrated by comparisons to Andrew. So they are leaking because these two simply cannot help themselves. And of course, they will be completely despondent looking at the front pages of the British newspapers today because William and Catherine, with that appearance at the BAFTAs, have got it right yet again. Look at that on the front page of The Sun. Wills, I'm not in a calm state. It was a way for him to, I guess, show his human side while also commenting on what the Daily Mail describes as Andrew arrest drama, with the strap there saying, "The Crown in crisis." So to Brittany, editor of the Royal News Network now, a lot going on, of course, Brittany, but I do find this attempt by Prince Harry and Meghan Markle to rewrite history over this story morally repulsive, actually. I really do, because to me, Brittany, it's proving yet again that they actually don't give a damn about the survival of the British royal family. They care about using whatever they can to stoke their own reputation, to try and save their own reputation, I should say.
Yes, Dan, when it comes to Harry and Meghan, they're just constantly moving the goalpost where they think public sentiment is going at the time. And what's sort of ironic and, of course, hypocritical about Harry's criticism of the monarchy and saying that he feels vindicated and everything, the problem between what Harry reported and what's happened with Andrew are two different things, because Andrew's issue is that there was too little control over him, whereas Harry was complaining there was too much control over him. So which is it? You can't complain that the institution wasn't working correctly when somebody is able to, let's say, have too much freedom and he's complaining about not having enough freedom. Because remember, they had their freedom flight and everything. So that's been a huge aspect of his talking points. But I think this whole crisis reveals in Harry and Meghan's reaction to it is that they do feel vindicated, but they don't have a right to be. And they are at the same point a little petrified, because once this door opens, once the monarchy Andrew is stripped of his place in the line of succession, it can happen to anyone, because once you crack that door can be opened wider as time requires. So Harry and Meghan definitely are worried today.
Oh, yes, they are. And I want to get to that later. Brittany, can we just talk about this appearance from William and Catherine at the BAFTAs? So Catherine was in a pink Gucci dress, but as you can see here, it was actually first worn in 2019. So this was a recycled dress. But I did like this from Lauren the Insider, who compared and contrasted our future king and queen compared to the other two. Thank Lord William was the firstborn. I mean, look, what we will never know, Brittany, probably is whether Catherine was actually intending to attend the BAFTAs. William often goes in his role as president. Catherine hasn't been, obviously because of her cancer battle, but because very often they don't make these joint appearances. But it felt important, didn't it? It felt important to see them and to see them at their best last night, given we have not seen the king since the hours after Andrew's arrest.
Dan Wootton raises a series of claims that deserve closer examination, not because they are sensational, but because of what they imply. In this segment, he suggests that Meghan Markle is running what he calls a plot linked to the Andrew scandal, that Prince Harry is using Andrew's crisis as a route back into royal relevance, and that William and Catherine are positioning themselves as the steady alternative, the responsible centre, while Sussex sources, commentators, and online factions scramble to rewrite history. My purpose here isn't to react emotionally or to litigate personalities. It's to examine the incentives, the timing, and the strategic logic behind the narrative Dan is building, and what it does to the larger story the public is being asked to accept. First, notice the construction. The video opens at a sprint, twisted plot, rumbled, taunting, white knight saviour, and the insinuation of something sinister. Those words do more than describe. They preload the audience to read ordinary PR behaviour, a photo, a briefing, a silence, a recycled quote, as deliberate conspiracy that can be entertaining, but it also risks flattening a complicated institutional crisis into a morality play with clear villains and heroes, Don's core claim is essentially this: Harry and Meghan benefit from Andrew being the headline, because Andrew's scandal reframes the monarchy's internal standards and makes the Sussex grievances look retrospectively justified. That is plausible as a broad media dynamic. Big scandals do change the frame. They reorder what seems serious, what seems petty, and what the public demands accountability for. Where we have to be careful is the leap from benefit to plot. In most modern reputation crises, you don't need a master plan. You need three things: a vacuum, a narrative hook, and a set of incentives. The vacuum is the public's lack of verified information. The hook is a simple story that travels fast. The incentives are obvious. Each faction wants to survive the news cycle with the least damage and the most leverage. So, when Dan argues that Meghan will eventually claim she had to leave to protect the children because of Andrew, he's reacting to a possible future framing, not evidence of a present strategy. It may happen, it may not, but predicting a future PR line isn't proof that a current plot exists. It's an interpretation, and interpretations should be labelled as such. Next, Dan critiques what he calls silence from Harry and Meghan, while also pointing to alleged briefings that signal vindication. This is an important point, but it needs precision. Public silence and private briefing can coexist, and in celebrity communications, they often do. Silence is not the absence of messaging, it's the absence of direct accountability. You can stay silent and still communicate through sources, sympathetic outlets, and carefully placed reactions. However, even if we accept Dan's claim that Sussex-adjacent voices are briefing, the question becomes, what does that briefing achieve? It does two things. One, it reframes their departure as survival along northern choice, which is reputationally valuable. Two, it relocates the core problem inside the institution, not inside the couple. That is standard crisis logic. Move the spotlight from the actor to the system. But Dan also makes a second move. He presents the Andrew scandal as something Harry and Meghan could have raised earlier, and because they didn't, he treats their current posture as opportunistic. Again, that may be a fair question to ask, but we should also acknowledge the constraints.
Ben sent a very clear message of unity, Catherine and William, and I think they had a great showing at the BAFTAs. And I always enjoy it when she's able to go, because she did take 2 years off initially for her cancer treatment, and she didn't attend in 2025 either. And I love their coordination here. William in the burgundy velvet suit jacket, and Catherine has that just little burgundy velvet belt on the dress. And so they're very matching, but at the same time, it's not so on the nose. It is very classy, very elegant. They looked great. And of course, the Hollywood royalty there, the Hollywood glitterati, are always impressed by royalty, because to them, royalty is the pinnacle. And Harry and Meghan leaving the royal family to just schlep it in Hollywood, none of them are impressed by that. And even less so as Harry and Meghan's prospects continue to fail. But Catherine and William are the future of the monarchy, and they definitely looked at the BAFTAs.
Yeah, they absolutely did. I obviously showed that moment where William said, look, he wasn't in a calm state. But I think it is quite nice just to look at the entire conversation, Brittany, because actually there was some really lovely dynamic. It's a little bit difficult to hear because they separated, so the camera sort of stays on Catherine. But it's some nice colour, and I think it showed that even though William is clearly feeling pretty troubled at the moment, he was still in an okay place before the ceremony. Watch this.
She watched Hamlet last night, it was in front of tears. So I said I can't watch it, I can't watch it. I have watched some, but I'm very nice to see it.
Have you seen most of the films of yourselves? Yeah.
So
we hear you saw homework. Yeah, I thought that sounded like that. Actually, I thought that was going to end up as very popular today. Did you survive? Yeah, it was so beautiful.
I just think we have one more award, 29 awards we won next year. Big box office.
Which one would you win?
Well, I just think it's nice, and I'm going to be careful, I'm not biased particular person, but like Top Gun 2, for instance, it's one of the most incredible films I've watched in a long time. The highest grossing, so serious about how he takes the action scenes, they're all done. How does
So it was a really nice conversation, I thought, Brittany, but of course, the headline was what we saw earlier in the show. Let's just actually take another look at it, just to be clear, when he said he wasn't calm enough to watch Hamnet.
I haven't watched Hamnet. I watched it last night. You need to be in a quiet state. You need to be in a calm state. I'm not at the moment. I'll save it for when I'm feeling ready.
What did you make of the conversation, Brittany?
Oh, Dan, it's very natural, I think, what William is saying there. When there's a very emotional movie, very sad movie, if you're experiencing that in your life at that point, that maybe not what you want to see, because it reminds you too much of what the turmoil in your own life. And so it's natural to say, Catherine, yes, you watch Hamnet. I'm going to go over and I'm going to watch Tropic Thunder or something, just something to laugh, to distract. Because sometimes when things hit a little too close to home in the moment, that's not necessarily always what you want. And so I think William's response there was very natural. I think people completely understand. And he's not required to watch any of the movies. Obviously, he should watch as many of them as he can. But if he decides then, you know what, I can't really watch this today, right now, too much going on, I think everybody completely understands his perspective there.
Yeah, and it was a human way for him to allow the media to run a comment about this. And I think it was quite strategic. He obviously knew there were members of the Royal Rota watching that conversation. And for him, Brittany, I think it's very important to put out a message. No, we take this seriously. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
This isn't keep calm and carry on, which might be what Charles is trying to do. That's not what I'm trying to do. I think it was a subtle way of getting that message out. But Brittany, I also wanted to show you Catherine at the rugby, because it was really different. The, I guess, love and support and total stardom that she received at this rugby game compared to a new video, Brittany, that is going viral of Harry and Meghan from the NBA last week, where they were sort of ignored, including by the players. So let's just watch these back to back. You've got Catherine absolutely receiving adulation in the dressing rooms compared to Harry and Meghan, where like no one even noticed really or cared. Watch this.
Everyone gave it all that all. You could see how much time was it. Yeah. Found a lot of things.
It's quite sad seeing that latter clip, isn't it, Brittany? Because they look back sort of like, hello, we're a big deal.
Yeah, you could really feel that. I was like surprised. I was like, oh yeah, they're looking back going, is anybody paying attention to us as we leave? Oh, come on. But Harry and Meghan going there is just such an obvious publicity stunt. And neither one of them know anything about basketball. So nobody really cares about them being there, cares about them appearing, at least from the players and the team. Because we know Harry and Meghan have had essentially no comment ever on basketball. Whereas Catherine is actually quite passionate about rugby. Her family goes and watches rugby. And so she is very familiar with the game. She's very, I think, has some passion for the game. They like play it at home. And so Catherine being there, she can reflect. And I think people appreciate an actual fan. And that's what Catherine is. In addition to her role as patron, as a princess, she's an actual fan of the game. And people feel that. They appreciate that. And that's part of the reason why I think Catherine is always so welcomed at those type of events.
Now, Brittany, we've got to talk about what's going on with Fergie and specifically Beatrice too, because obviously these are the two women closest to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, seemingly suffering the most, although I'm not sure people are feeling too much sympathy for Sarah Ferguson, given that Paula Frolic has reported that she actually received this trip to the Swiss wellness resort completely for free. So this is paralysis recovery in Zurich, Switzerland. It's one of the most expensive places in the world to visit, $13,000 a night. But she has done PR work for them before. So Paula Frolic reporting that it was free. But you compare and contrast that to what Tom Sykes is hearing about Beatrice, which actually does feel much more serious, Brittany. A friend of Beatrice telling the Royalist, Beatrice is on the verge of a nervous breakdown. She is horrified by what has been revealed about her father, as any child would be, and of course her absolute sympathy is with the victims. Beatrice is slowly coming to terms with the enormity of her father's alleged crimes. It's an incredibly painful process. Now, Brittany, let's start with the girls. You know, I have probably been more critical of Eugenie and Beatrice than most royal commentators because I do not believe they're blameless in this, especially in terms of that visit to see Epstein in the days after he was released from prison when they were both adults. One of them was in their 20s. And to me, that was a dereliction of their royal duty as princess to ask their mother the appropriate questions about why you're taking us to visit this dude who's just been released from prison. I mean, all it takes is a little bit of research to find out he's gone down for child sex trafficking. No, mum, I'm not going to come with you to this one. You go right ahead. So I don't feel the same sympathy as many do. However, reading those quotes from those friends to Tom Sykes, you know, Beatrice slowly coming to terms with the enormity of her father's alleged crimes, it's an incredibly painful process. Oh, you know, the heart does sort of go out to her in that instance. It must be a horrifying realization, I think.
It really is, Dan. And I do feel sorry for the girls because, yes, I'm sure they would probably had some peripheral awareness of certain things. And obviously they benefited quite a bit from their parents' relationship with Epstein, whether conscious of it or unconscious of it. You know, we may not know exact details there, but this entire process has been hugely damaging, hugely scathing. It's destroyed their family in many ways, and that's horrific. But it does come down to their father's actions, and they were party to at least probably some aspects of that. Their grandmother helps facilitate, I think, some of it as well, just by kind of burying her head in the sand and looking the other way. And so this was a problem, unfortunately, decades in the making. And it's just so unfortunate that no one really tried to rein Andrew in so much earlier. I don't know how much they could do about Fergie, but Andrew especially, there were so many things they could have done. And the girls and their families, it impacts them severely. If Andrew's removed from the line of succession, will the girls and their children follow? We're not sure at this point, but it's a distinct possibility. And I'm sure that is extremely worrying to them. In addition to what's happening to their father and what could happen to their father will be on their mind as well.
And what about Fergie? Any sympathy there?
No, no, not really any at all. I've read through Andrew Lowney's book, and I mean, she's very much in some ways, although a little bit less like, let's say, dignified, but Fergie is a lot like Meghan, always chasing the money. She was obviously in a lot more debt than as far as where Meghan has been, but Fergie has always been chasing the money, willing to do anything for money, you know, trading favors, you know, dealing with nefarious people, always in pursuit of the almighty dollar. And she has had years to rein in her spending. I mean, apparently she's broke now. It's like, where did all the money go? You had apartments in London. You had some money coming in and it's all gone. And she just cannot help herself. She's much like her husband in that way. They have been wildly self-destructive, and she's reaping the rewards of that, basically, you could say, is the entire dismantling of her reputation as well. And in this case, I think it's much deserved.
Okay, Brittany, look, we spoke about it, or at least touched on it earlier, but there's much more coming out of Montecito about Harry and Meghan's complete panic and the fact that they are gripped with panic over the line of succession issue. I believe that they should be.
When a couple is inside an institution, there are legal issues, defamation risks, and internal confidentiality. When they are outside, there are different risks, including accusations of profiteering from trauma, or of weaponizing allegations for leverage. So the absence of a major Andrew discussion in past Sussex interviews doesn't prove moral indifference by itself. It proves something narrower, that their public agenda at that time focused on issues they were prepared to speak on, and issues they believed served their case, that still might be self-interested, but self-interested is not the same as sinister plots. Now, the most strategically interesting part of Don's segment is actually Prince William. Don highlights William's brief remark about not being in a calm state and treats it as a signal, not keep calm and carry on. But this is serious. That reading is plausible, and it points to the modern problem for the monarchy. When public trust is fragile, tone becomes policy. A single unscripted moment can act as reassurance. We see the crisis. We feel the gravity. We're not detached. If that's what's happening, it reveals the deeper institutional reality. The palace can no longer rely on distance and ritual alone. It now must demonstrate emotional and ethical credibility in real time. That is a fundamental shift, and it's why crisis narratives get weaponized, because whichever branch of the family looks most credible in a moral crisis becomes the default. Future. This is where the Yorks enter the story, Dom's discussion, and the wider commentary ecosystem he draws on keeps circling the same dilemma. What responsibility do adult children have for the reputational fallout of their parents? There's a temptation in the public sphere to demand dramatic acts, condemnations, disowning, make a statement, yet in real life, people often freeze, out of shock, loyalty, legal caution, or simply a desire not to pour fuel on the fire. That doesn't absolve anyone, but it does explain why silence isn't always a strategy. Sometimes it's paralysis. And that brings us back to incentives. Dan frames the Sussexes as rewriting history and gloating. Maybe, but a colder reading is this. Everyone is trying to locate a safe position before the next tranche of revelations. Because institutional scandals don't end with one headline. They unfold, they widen, they attach themselves to adjacent names. And when they do, the most important asset is not popularity, it's plausibility. The question becomes, who can the public believe is acting in good faith? My conclusion is simple. Don's video reflects a broader pattern in royal commentary. An institutional crisis becomes a battlefield where every faction tries to claim moral high ground. The danger is that this turns accountability into factional sport, where the aim is not clarity, but advantage. If we want a serious public conversation, we should separate three things: what is alleged, what is verified, and what is inferred. We should demand institutional transparency where it's warranted, and we should be cautious about upgrading predictions into proof, because the story here isn't ultimately Meghan's plot or Harry's vindication. The story is that a modern monarchy cannot survive on symbolism alone. It survives on trust, and trust collapses when rules appear inconsistent, when accountability looks selective, and when every crisis becomes an opportunity for rival narratives instead of a commitment to standards.